and it's starting right now. Shots like, ooh, yeah, yeah. Better not stop. Shots like, when you smoke love, you beat the shot. Shots like, waiting on the planet.
So let's get right into the tutorial. For this particular pattern, I used 400 gram of 100 of a medium weight yarn. The pattern is super quick to work. The moment you just understand the 2 rows that you will be repeating, everything else is going to be so easy for you to go through. For this particular pattern, I am using a 5mm, and I think I later on did switch to a smaller crochet hook later in the video, and you guys would see why. So let's get right into it. One is worked in multiple of 3, and a multiple of 3 is any number that can be divided by 3. So that would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and so on. So to get started, we're going to start with the front panel. The front and the back panel are actually the same, so we're going to start with the first panel. You're going to make a slip knot, and you are going to chain a multiple of 3. And again, I said multiple of 3 is basically any number that can be divided by 3. In my case, I chained a total of 48 for my panel, for my first panel, and that is the length of the top. So if you want yours to be shorter, you're going to chain less, and if you want it to be longer, you are going to chain more. Just depends on the size or the length that you want your top to be. And just to be sure, you can go ahead and take the measurement just to make sure that you are actually on the right track, because the moment you start working on the pattern now, it will be difficult for you to add the length to the pattern. It will be difficult for you to make it longer in case you want it longer instead of short, right? Or make it shorter instead of long. So just take your measurements just to make sure that you are actually on the right path. And from there on, we are going to start the first row. And for the first row, you are going to skip the first 8 chains. So you're counting your way inwards and skip the first 8, and into the 9th chain, you are going to insert a single crochet. So you're going to go right into that 9th chain with a single crochet. From there on, you are going to chain 5. Skip the next 2 chains, and into the 3rd, you're going to insert a single crochet, chain 5, skip the next 2 stitches, and into the 3rd, you're going to insert another single crochet, chain 5, skip the next 2 chains, and into the 3rd, you're going to insert a single crochet. And this is what you're going to repeat until you get to the very end of the chain. And you should have something like this after your first row. And again, like I said, this pattern is simple. It's going to be a repetition of this row that we're about to create, which is row 2 and row 3. So to get started with row 2, you're going to chain 6 and turn. And right into that very first chain 5 space, you are going to insert a single crochet stitch. After your single crochet, you're going to go ahead and chain 5. And right into the next chain 5 space, you are going to insert a single crochet. Afterwards, you're going to chain 5. And into the next chain 5 space, a single crochet, chain 5. And into the next chain 5 space, you are going to insert a single crochet. And this is what you're going to do until you get to your very last space, and then I'll see you guys and show you guys exactly how to end off the row. So right here, I'm coming to the end. I'm going to go ahead and chain 5, and into that last space, we are going to end off this row a little bit different, and this is going to be the lower part of your top. So you're going to go into that very last space with a single crochet, but then right after, you're going to chain 3, and now you're going to go into the 3rd chain. So counting from the bottom, you're going to count 1, 2, 3 chains upwards, and right into that chain is where you're going to insert a treble crochet. So you're going to yarn over twice and create a treble crochet right there. And this is going to differentiate the upper part of your panel to the lower part, and this side on my right, I think, yeah, on my right is the upper part, while the left where we just inserted the treble crochet is going to be the lower part. And that's just the way you're going to differentiate those two, because we will be needing that actual pattern so we can know what's the upper part and what's the lower part. For the next row, you are going to chain 6, and you're going to skip that chain 3 space, and you're going to go into your chain 5 space, and into the chain 5 space you're going to insert a single crochet. You're going to chain 5, you're going to go into the next chain 5 space with a single crochet, chain 5, into the next chain 5 space with a single crochet, chain 5, and into the next chain 5 space with a single crochet. And you're going to repeat this until you get to the very end. And honestly, there is a difference between ending row 2 and ending row 3. When you're ending row 2, you want to make sure that you do the chain 3, because it's always going to be on the other side. But then right here, this is row 3. I'm just going to go right in there with a single crochet, because that's the upper part. So to start the next row, which is row 4, you're going to be chaining 6 and turn. And right into that very first chain 5 space, you are going to insert a single crochet, chain 5, into the next chain 5 space, a single crochet, chain 5, and into the next chain 5 space, a single crochet. And this is what you're going to repeat. I get the fact that you might probably mistake the spaces, the upper part and the lower part. That's the reason why I wanted to highlight that, so you guys know exactly what the difference is. So on the lower part, which is where we're working our way to, the pattern looks different because of the treble crochet we have right there. But then on the opposite side, which is the upper part, it's just the basic chain 5 into the space. And make sure whenever you're starting your row, you're chaining 6 instead of 5. But then along the way, before you get to the opposite end, you are chaining 5 in between each single crochet. Honestly, hope I've explained this the way you guys understand. If you don't, definitely go back and look. I'm going to see if I can put some time slap of the pattern so you guys can go back to the first row, second row, and third row, so you can actually know what you're doing. Because again, like I said, the moment you know exactly what the pattern is about, it's going to be easy for you to just play around with it. So I'm just making my way to the opposite side, which is the lower part. So I'm going to chain 5, and I'm going to go into that last space, which is the chain 6 space. But then I'm going to now chain 3. 1, 2, 3, yarn over twice, and into the third chain in that set of 6, I'm going to insert a treble crochet. That's the difference between this side and the opposite side. Just like that. And then when that is complete, you are going to now chain 6, because you're starting a new row, and you're going to turn. Make sure you skip the chain 3 space, but then you're going to go into the next chain 5 space with a single crochet. And then from there on, you're going to chain 5 into the chain 5 space, a single crochet, chain 5 into the chain 5 space, a single crochet, until you make your way to the opposite side. And that is what you're going to repeat for a total of 24 rows. I also wanted to highlight, like with this pattern, it's a little bit difficult for you to count your rows. What I did was I counted my single crochet and I counted the chain 5 space. So if you want to mark whenever you finish a row, if you want to mark that down, I'll suggest you mark that down if you're a beginner, because then you know exactly what row you're on. Because I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit difficult for me to count my rows, but I did a total of 24 rows, and that obviously depends on the size you're making. So if you're making a size small, you're going to be needing less, and if you're making a size bigger than what I made, you're going to be needing more. You guys have already seen that it's a oversized. I wouldn't say I made a size medium. I definitely made a size extra large, or maybe a large, depending on the look you're going for. If you're going for the same oversized look, then you can size up 2. You can go 2 size upwards. If you're making a size, for example, if you want to make a size small, then I suggest you make a size large. and I'm usually a medium, but then I made a size extra large. So it just depends on the look that you're going for. If you want it to be fitted, then you're just going to use your shoulder measurement to get this panel done. And so this is what you should have. I am going to leave some row recommendation for different sizes below, but again, like I said, like I always say, I'm making this pattern for the first time, so I generally wouldn't know exactly how many rows you'll be needing for each size, because I am only making this in one size. But based on my experience, I can leave some recommendation for you guys in the comment. But then that's the reason why I always say you can grab my pattern to make it things easier for you, because I have everything else measured and done, and I just take my time with them, right? So you can find them on there. But we're going to now start the next part of this pattern, which is going to be an increase. So right there, I am going to chain 6, and into that very first chain 5 space, I am going to insert a single crochet, and then I'm going to chain 5, and I'll go back into that same space with a single crochet, and this automatically gives me an extra gap, an extra chain 5 space, which is going to be the increasing. And as you guys can see, I am increasing on the upper part of the panel and not on the lower part, because again, like I said, where we have the treble crochet is going to be on the lower part, and this increasing is just to make sure that the neckline, just to create a neckline, a different neckline from the shoulder panel, right? So I'm just going to continue the pattern, which is just a basic chain 5 in a single crochet into the chain 5 space, and that is what I'm going to do up until I get to the opposite side. And again, because I'm not decreasing or increasing on that side, I will just do the same exact thing I've been doing, and I'm going to make my way all the way up to the opposite side, where I'm going to do another increase, but you guys will see when I get to that point. So right here, I'm coming back to the point. I'm going to make sure I chain my 5 and go into that chain 5 space with a single crochet, chain 5, and go right into that space with my last single crochet. And from there on, we are going to now chain 6 and turn, and we're going to do the same thing we did at the very beginning previously, which is go in there with a single crochet, but then shift your single crochet, chain 5, and go back into that same space with another single crochet, and that is going to be your second increase for this pattern. And from there on, you're going to just continue to insert a single crochet into every chain 5 space until you get to the end. And I'm doing this for a total of 3 rows, the increasing. So now I'm going to make my way all the way down, and I'm going to do end of the row and come all the way up, and then I'll do another row that goes down with an increase, and that will leave me with 3 increases in total. And that would leave you with something like this after your 3 increasing. So from there on, we are going to stop increasing, and we are going to just continue the pattern like we did before, which is just a basic chain 6 into the chain 5 space, and then chain 5 into the next chain 5 space, and so on and so forth. So right here, I am back after my center panel. I did a total of 22 rows. Again, for the shoulder panel, which is the first set, we did 24, and for the center panel, I did a total of 22. Like I said, again, I will go ahead and see if I can leave some recommendation rows for different sizes down below. So right there, you can see I just folded the panel so you guys can see exactly what the idea is. We are now going to decrease to make sure we go back to that original length that we had. And to do the decreasing, all I did was I am going to skip that very first chain 6 that we usually do, and I'm going to go into the first chain space with a single crochet, and I'm going to chain 5 into the next, chain 5, and into the next. So all I did was just keep the chain 6 that we usually do at the beginning, and that automatically gives us less stitch than what we had previously, right? So an increasing is basically adding the amount of spaces we have in this pattern, while a decreasing is reducing the amount of spaces we have. And again, you're making sure you're doing that on the same side that you did the increasing, so the upper parts, which means when I get to the lower part at the end of this particular row, I am not doing anything different. I'm doing the exact same thing I've been doing. It's when I make my way up and I'm about to go down again, that's the time I'm going to do another second decreasing. And again, because we did increase for third, we did increase 3 times on the opposite side, which means at the beginning we are going to be decreasing 3 times just so we can balance the pattern perfectly. So again, for the second decrease, you're going to go back into that very first chain 5 space with a single crochet. You're going to go ahead and chain 5 then and go into the next chain 5 space with a single crochet. So you're skipping the chain 6 that you do initially, you do in the beginning of each row, and that automatically reduces the amount of stitches that you have in your pattern. And again, like I said, I'm doing this for 3. This is my second decreasing, which means I have 1 more to do, and that is automatically going to give us the same, take us back to the original length that we had. So right there you can see we already decreased twice and we are a little bit lower than where we were. And when you have all 3 decreasing done and you fold your panel, you should have something like this. Simple. And now, of course, folding that automatically means we are going to do the same exact 24 rows we did at the very beginning to balance off that side. And again, depending on the rows you did, you're just going to do the same amount. If you did 16, then you're going to make sure you do 16 to balance off the opposite side. And like I said earlier, the pattern is the same exact step, which means you're going to do the same exact step for the opposite panel, and then you're going to come back when you have 2 panels and we're going to attach those 2 panels together before we start working on the sleeve. Attaching the 2 panels together is super simple, so you're just going to lay those 2 together. And what we're going to do for first, we're going to just make sure that the neckline area, just where we did the dimension between the neck and the shoulder, aligns together well. And you're going to attach your yarn on one side and just single crochet your way to the opposite side. And whatever you do on one side is the same exact thing you'll be doing on the other side. So you're just carefully going to single crochet. And because of how stretchy this pattern is, I would suggest to use some stitch markers to mark few points along the way up until the neckline. So it's going to be easy for you to make sure that you are single crocheting the panels together in the right way, and also make sure that you don't have less or more, because the pattern is very stretchy and you might overstretch one panel and not stretch the other one the same way. So using stitch markers as a beginner, that would guide you through that. But I am just carefully single crocheting, grabbing a stitch on one panel and then another stitch, a stitch on the other panel, and I'm going to single crochet those 2 together. You can also use a needle, slip stitch, whatever method that you're used to do this method. You don't have to use a single crochet, just because I'm using a single crochet, by the way. So I'm just going to do that all the way to the very top. And again, like I said, whatever you do on one side, you are going to do the same exact thing on the opposite side. And now for the sleeve. So when it comes to the sleeve, I made a mistake. I made mine too long. It was so unnecessary that I wasted my time making these panels too long, and it wasn't necessary. So I'm going to give you guys a cheat code, right? So when you have your panel, after single crocheting those 2 panels together, put them on, and wherever that shoulder panel falls, wherever your I don't know what it's going to call by now, but whatever it falls, making sure it's not off shoulder, by the way, like it's still sitting on your neck well. Wherever that falls, that's the way where your sleeve is going to start. So from your wrist up until that area is how much length you're going to need for your sleeve. So don't do the same mistake like I did. And with the sleeve, it's the same exact pattern. Instead of chaining 48 that I did chain for the main panel, for the sleeve I chained 60 because I wanted it to be a bit wider. I don't even know why I did that, but if you want to go for the oversized sleeve look, then I'll suggest you chain 60. So that's the only thing. You chain 60 and you work your way up, just the same exact thing we did for the main panel. And again, like I said, I made mine too long, which means I had to go back and take off at least 10. I think I took off 10 to 15 rows just because I necessarily didn't have to make it that long. So now I am just going to attach the sleeve to the main panel. With attaching the sleeve, you just want to fold it, obviously fold it, and then you're going to lay it flat with your folded panel, and just the same exact thing you did around the shoulder to the neck area, the neckline. That's the same thing you're doing, but I want to say that you want to make sure that the seam that you're about to create around the armpit hole is going to align with the seam that you already have around the shoulder to the neckline. So don't forget to turn your panel to the wrong side, where you're going to carefully single crochet around the sleeve. Just the same thing. I honestly, I feel like looking at what I'm doing is way better than me explaining, so I'm just going to leave the clip so you guys can see exactly what is being done.
Say my name, say my name. No one is around you. Say, baby, I love you. You ain't running game. Say my name, say my name. You acting kinda shady. Ain't calling me baby. Why the sudden change? Say my name, say my name. If no one is around you, say, baby, I love you. If you ain't running game. Say my name, you acting kinda shady. Ain't calling me baby. Better say my name.
This is exactly what you should have when it's complete, but because we still have an opening around the arm and around the lower part of the panel, we are going to just cut off the yarn around that armpit area and reattach the yarn either around the sleeve, or you can do that around the lower part, because you just want to make sure that you make your way one row all the way down with a single crochet. And again, you still want to make sure that your panel is on the wrong side, because you're about to seam the armpit area all the way down to the lower part, right? So you're going to reattach your yarn and use the exact same method you used to seal that area. And of course, whatever you do on one side, you are going to do on the opposite side to get the exact same result. And now for the sleeve, I did mention that I chained a total of 60, which was way too wide compared to what I would usually chain. But because of the fitting that I was going for, it's also fine. So now what we're going to do is we are going to make this lower part of the sleeve, which is supposed to fit around your wrist, a little bit smaller than it is currently. So right there is where I switched to a smaller crochet hook. In this clip, I'm still using a 5, but I later on did take that off and redo it again with a 3.3 millimeter actually. So right there, I am going into a single crochet space with a single crochet, and into that chain 5 space, that is where I'm going with 1 single crochet. So you're basically trying to make that panel smaller, so you don't have to go into every chain with a single crochet. You're just going to go into every gap with 1 single crochet, and when you get into a single crochet space, you go in there with a single crochet, and this is automatically going to give you less stitches, which is automatically going to make this part of the panel smaller. And that's the goal, right? We want to make sure that it's smaller so it can fit the wrist, but at the same time we'll still have the puffy and oversized look going on around the arm area. So that is all I'm going to do, which is 1 single crochet all around until I get to the very beginning where I started with the single crochets, and I am just going to do that for a few rows until it's solid, because I don't think 1 row is solid enough. And what I did on this arm is the same thing I did on the other sleeve, and it's the same thing I did around the neck area, because if you do put on your top now, or your sweater, I don't know what we're going to call it, you can tell that the neck area is a bit wide. So we're going to just stitch that, or snitch that, or snitched, I don't know. We're just going to attempt to make it a little bit more smaller than what it is now, so it's not like an oversized look or off the shoulder look. But however, I do think the off the shoulder look was actually cute. Because that's not what I wanted to do initially, I just thought, okay, cool, I'm just gonna stick to the original plan. But it is definitely a look. So if you like the look more, then I'll just say skip the entire process around the neck area. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. Exactly. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So that's what I did for the lower part as well of the top. I genuinely wanted to do that, but because I want to make a matching skirt, I am going to wait until the skirt is complete. Then I would know for sure if I want to snitch the waist. Is it snitched? I feel like I'm saying the wrong word, but then I'll know if I want to make the waist smaller or if I want to keep it loose, loose look, just what it looks like now. But I'll keep you guys updated. But that's what honestly I'm going to do. I feel like I keep blabbing out, but that's what I'm going to do around the edge of the sleeve, around the neck area. And if you decide to do that around the edge of the top as well, do you? I definitely think you can do that. I might do it, but again, I want to finish off the skirts. Then I can decide if I want to make the waist fitted or if I want to leave it as a loose look, just the way it is currently. And that's exactly what I'm going to do around the panel. You want to use not too tight stitch because you already using a 3 millimeter, because you're going from a 5 to a 3, right? That automatically makes the stitches smaller, so you don't have to use a tight tension while you're doing this, especially for the neck area, because if you do, you might not be able to get the pattern to go through your neck. Your top might not be able to go through your neck if you have a big head like mine, because I struggle to put that thing on. I struggled. So please don't be like me and make it too tight. Just so it's small but then not too small enough, but also it's not too big. Hopefully you guys get what I mean by that. But that's honestly what this pattern is about. I wanted to make this tutorial so quick, and I hope I've been able to just keep you guys in, but then not too long, so you can actually go on and do something else and start something else. It's a quick pattern. I am going to make a matching skirt like I mentioned earlier, so I cannot wait to make that and show you guys the exact come back with a tutorial for you all, because that's why you're here, for the tutorials, right? But yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. I hope you enjoy making this as much as I did. And if you have made it up until this point, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will leave the written pattern down below in the description. So if you want to shop and support me in the little way you can, please do. I always appreciate you guys taking time to buy my patterns, even though you watch my tutorials. That means so much to me, and that's one of the way I can keep showing up for you guys the way I do. So please support me in the little way you can, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.